Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full on follow along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show.
What's going on, everybody? This is Aaron Guyett on the LivingFit Show, LivingFit's education director, but enough about me. I get the incredible honor, the great pleasure to have Tony Gentilcore on this podcast. So we're about to get our brains blown, our minds blown. Either that or you're just going to listen to two guys rapping about, fitness and then everything else that comes up. So
we'll just talk about our favorite Wu-Tang members or something. I don't know.
Precisely.
Which legally is, that's cool.
I just saw that on one of your recent posts. I'm like, my man, Wu-Tang Clan. So health and almost teaching health to seventh graders, which I can think of there. Like normally we dive in. It's like, how did you get into fitness? Which I guess that's kind of part of a story.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Like how I got into fitness was, my formidable years. I'm an 80s and 90s kid. So I was a kid in the 80s and I was a teenager and a college young man in the 90s.
You and me both.
So I grew up watching, I can't tell you how many times I watched Commando. Like a lot. Or Rambo movies or Terminator, Jean-Claude Van Damme, like all those movies I watched as a young kid. So that I have to say that was my introduction to fitness, because I'm the only one in my immediate family that is remotely, I wouldn't say remotely health conscious, but got into lifting weights and playing a lot of sports. I don't know where I got it or how I got it. I just got it. And I just kind of naturally gravitated to the weight room, obviously because I wanted to become a better baseball player and get better at sports, but also watching a lot of those manly movies back in the 80s. I was like, those guys look pretty cool. I want to look like that. So I started lifting weights at a pretty young age. I think I got my first weight set at 13, maybe 12, and put it in my parents' basement, and I would play 90s hip hop and do copious amounts of bicep curls. And
yes.
That was my introduction to fitness. And then because I played sports all through high school and college, and I was lucky enough to play at the collegiate level at baseball, unfortunately, not many professional teams were looking for a right-handed pitcher that topped out at like 88 miles an hour. So, baseball did not pan out. And then when that happened, I was like, oh shit, I actually have to get a degree in something. So I went to school and I was like, I was this close to becoming a health teacher. I did my student teaching placement at both a high school level and a middle school level. And at the middle school level, I had the wonderful opportunity, and I say that sarcastically, to teach sex education to a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds. So, having
to rewarding that would be.
Yeah, that was not. I mean, it was fine. I mean, we got a lot of giggles for sure.
Yeah.
But certainly, I was like, do I really want to do this the rest of my life? And no, I'm not belaboring health teachers at all. I did like doing it, but then, I had to do an internship from my concentration, and I ended up doing that at a wellness fitness center for a company. So basically I was there to be a personal trainer for employees that would come in before work, during lunch, after work. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get people to start deadlifting and squatting and, becoming a bunch of beasts. And that was much more palatable to me. And thankfully, when I was done with that internship, I think it was a 2 or 3 month internship, they hired me right away. There happened to be a job opening. So I was in corporate fitness, and I as an adjunct to that, I was working at various commercial gyms as a personal trainer for the first 3 years of my career. And then I graduated, and Eric Cressey and I became really good friends, and we opened up Cressey Sports Performance in 2007 along with Pete Dupuis. And I was there for 8 years, and I left in 2015, and now I'm doing my own thing in Boston with a small personal training studio here in the city. So, yeah, that's kind of like my 3 to 4 minute elevator pitch of my life in fitness.
Right. And so something that I notice about you and actually really appreciate about you is you have this like really personable writing style where it's you're giving out like high quality, high value information, but you're doing it in a way that's so approachable and funny. And so would you say, I mean, so you do obviously have a brick and mortar, but would you say that writing and that has become like its own beast, its own product, its own service kind of a thing?
It was quite, I look back at my career. I had no aspirations early in my career to be a writer, let alone be one that gets paid to write and one that people actually read and someone that, that people actually seek out and read my stuff. I often joke that I think my 11th grade English teacher would be very, 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 very flabbergasted that I am a paid writer. Because I don't know where it came from. At some point, I don't know, circa 2005, 2006, I was reading a lot of stuff online and trying to educate myself. And, I became more aware of places like T Nation and Men's Health Online and bodybuilding.com. And I'd read all these articles and I'd be like, I like what this has to say, but I think I could say it in a little bit more of a accessible vibe, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And so I started dabbling with it and eventually had my first article on T Nation, I think in 2006. And really the best piece of advice I got was from TC Luoma, who's then the editor. He's still the editor there now. And he gave me one great piece of advice, and he kind of saw it in my writing. He's like, people want to learn and become educated in fitness, but they also want to be entertained. Because honestly, when you start talking about squat mechanics and deadlift progressions and scapular upward rotation and extension versus flexion based back pain, those aren't, very colorful, entertaining topics to write about. So, I was able to kind of separate myself from the masses and start including like cultural references and movie references and self-deprecating humor and, just in a way that made the content a little bit more chewable for people. And, it's worked well. Like, I think I often joke too that I'm a hard person to plagiarize because of my writing style. Like, you can usually when you start reading an article that I've written or a blog post I've written, like, oh, that's a Tony Gentilecore article because the type of humor. I mean, it's funny to me. I don't know if other people think it's funny, but the type of humor it is. So. Not to mention, I reference my cat Dagny all the time. So I don't know how many people whose cats are named Dagny. So I'm a hard person to plagiarize. But yeah, thank you for the kind words. People tend to enjoy my writing style, and I just really latched on to that initial piece of advice I got about infotainment. And I think particularly in the fitness realm, it works very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's since moved on to, I think he does ghostwriting and whatnot, but I have a really dear friend, Chris McCombs, who like, he really, it was all like his stuff was all about fitness marketing. Right. Mm-hmm. And kind of becoming this like, and he did the like normal marketing kind of pitchy stuff or whatever, but man, I always gravitated to that in the same way. Yeah. It was like, man, there's this entertainment piece to it and this very personal piece to it. And it's like, man, it's just so much more readable and you want to continue to go on.
That's the key. Cause I think today, especially with social media, it's never been easier to like be seen and get your stuff out there, but it's never been harder to actually people to read it and like to latch on. And so I think, the more authentic you come across, like people can sense fake pretty easily.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think it should be forced too. Like, there's certainly some fitness writers out there that are very dry and like, here's the research, and there's certainly a demographic for that and people who want that. But then also I do think that, an important component of the writing process is that connection. So, I don't get too deep into my personal life. Like I bring up my wife and I bring up my 5-year-old and of course my cat. And, I bring up fun stories from when I was student teaching and my baseball career or whatever. And people want to be able to relate to that, because if they can relate to it, I think that's what builds an audience. And I think, and again, the more authentic and accessible it comes across as, because I very much write how I talk. I've heard people say that repeatedly, especially when they come see me present in person. Like I'm very much, how I write is how I talk. And I think the more conversational you can make your writing, which is hard to do. Like it takes a lot of practice. Like it was the writing process for me is not easy. Like I know some writers, like a good friend of mine, John Romaniello, like he's someone that can just like put his fingers on the keyboard and tap right away. And like, before you know it, he's written 500 words. I'm somebody who's like sentence by sentence. I'm like very meticulous, and I reread it and I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound, and I'm constantly repeating it in my head. But that's just my process. And, I always thought that was like, oh man, I must be a really bad writer, or that just, oh man, I'm so bad at it. But the more and more I've read on books about other people's writing process, a lot of people are the same way. So, but I just think that the key is to, find your voice, know your lane. Like there's a reason why I don't talk a lot about fat loss and nutrition, and that's just not my area of expertise. But I certainly love helping people get stronger. I love helping people train, who are in pain or coming off rehab. And I think if you can find your voice and find like your niche, and then just if you could throw in a couple like He-Man references or whatever, like I think all the good for it. So it's always nice to know that people like to read my stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my question was going to be, is that how you present and speak? So then
of course.
Do you have to write then for your presentations, or does the presentation just come off in sort of that Tony voice where it's like,
well, I just try to keep it real, like for lack of a better term, like certainly, again, I think it's important to know your material. Like if you're going to be breaking down like upper extremity assessment and you're talking about the shoulder, like you got to know the anatomy and the functional anatomy and the physiology, but you got to be careful not to talk above people's heads too, even if they are in the profession. Like I think this industry, we try to wow each other and use big, important words. And, I found, at least in my experience, that most people don't care about that. They just, the more simple you can make it, I think the better. And that's kind of just how I've rolled my entire career. And it just goes with my writing too. Like again, like, I'm best friends with Eric Cressey. He and I were roommates earlier in our careers, and he has a certain writing style and I have a certain writing style. We both have he's obviously a bigger name than me, but routinely, people used to joke all the time. His wife even would be like, yeah, I don't read Eric's stuff. I read your stuff. And then, it's just like, but again, it's just people, and Eric's funny too. I'm not saying he's not a funny guy and he doesn't use humor, but it's just different. So, but in terms of presenting, again, I just try to, certainly it took practice, but, I just try to try to be myself. And certainly I kind of do lean into this idea of like, a properly or, a well-placed F-bomb, or like just some kind of like cultural reference. It does kind of enhance people's engagement. I've always kind of leaned into it. And I've gotten a few emails in my career of people like, being mad that I swear in my articles and stuff like that. And I just really kind of shrug it off. I'm like, listen, if you can take it for the actual message I'm sending because you're upset about this F-bomb I put in there, which was funny, by the way, then I'm sorry, that's on you, not me. So, I've always kind of leaned into that. And I really, and even when I present, I've had to learn the hard way regionally, like where I can swear and where I can't. So if I'm presenting here in Boston, fine. New York City, fine. I remember there was one instance where I think I was in Fargo, North Dakota, and I
Which
was
is an
presenting.
incredible movie, by the way.
Which great movie. And I remember the conference was kind of like 50% strength and conditioning coaches, personal trainers, and the other 50% were like doctors and like, you know, like that end of the spectrum with the medical model. And I remember I started talking about squat assessment and I started getting animated, or maybe it was squat technique or something. And I dropped an F-bomb and I was like, I could sense the just the wind come out of the room. I was like, and I remember I got a few feedback, like, oh, the presentation was good, but you know, his language was a bit, you know, so.
And you used one F-bomb?
I think it was one F-bomb, yeah, but it was,
come on,
you know, it was for facts. Like, I mean, it's one thing. I mean, I've listened to some people present, and it's their style where it's like, you know, it's like borderline egregious, where it's like,
exactly.
And like, I get it, but I can see how that can turn some people off, sure.
Yeah.
So I think if you can be a little bit reserved in your writing and in your presenting, but know when to place it for just to enhance a point that you're trying to make. I think that could be a very powerful tool, of course.
Yeah. I've been teaching around the world, and one thing I want to just emphasize every single time, it's like, no, try to make it simpler. Try to make it simpler. Yeah. Try, you know, like, and not dumb it down, but like simplify it, right? So you still want the same amount of volume, but it's like less, you know, $20 words or less 20 syllable words.
Don't you find that if you get to that point where you can yourself simplify it, don't you feel like you master the content more?
Oh, exactly.
Like,
I mean, that's an Einsteinian thing, right? It's like if you can say it to an 8-year-old or a third grader, whatever the saying is, right? I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, then you actually have mastered it, right? As opposed to.
And even with writing, like, I mean, I think the hard lessons I learned from the various editors I've had was like, you know, when you write something, whether it's an article or a blog post, like when you're done writing it and you proofread it, like take 20%, cut it. Like it doesn't need, there's a lot of superfluous stuff that we put in there. That gets repetitive or regurgitated, and you learn. Yeah, it is a learning process. Like you just learn as you go. I do. You know, I get fitness professionals all the time that will email me and ask, you know, how do I become a better writer, or how do I get published on this site, or how do I maybe do some more presenting? And I'm like, do it. I mean, it's not a sexy answer. I mean, the presenting part's a little bit more like intimidating. I get it, but the writing part, I mean, just stop emailing me and the 7 other people that you emailed about the same question and just start writing. It's going to suck. It's going to be hard. It's just the inevitability of it, but you need to start doing it. And then it's just repeated exposures. Like anyone who's familiar with Stephen King and how prolific of a writer he was, like I think it's from like 8 a.m. till 2 or 3 p.m. He is writing every single day. And not that I'm saying that's what you have to do, but even if it's just 250 words.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, something that I remember doing in my head, because somebody said this, right, gave me that same advice. And this is like probably 15 years ago, is I started to imagine, and obviously making sure that my clients were working out, like actually doing a workout, not just sitting there listening to me teach. But I remember imagining like, man, if this was an audience, what would I say to try to clarify the point and try to simplify it and try to, you know, bring home sort of the bacon, if you will, on, you know, whatever it was that the person either had to do or was doing, and started to see it and think about it from that standpoint. And it really changed the way that I even coached people, which actually improved my coaching. And then when I actually got to step on stage or step in front of a room full of trainers or a room full of people, it came out way easier, way better. And it was less clunky at first. I mean, it was still clunky. It still needs continually, I need to still refine this. Like I'm by no means the done master. I'm just continuing, you know, mastery in that. And then it's funny, I did want to make a point. So I was recently, this is the first time I've ever gotten, okay, I didn't like that feedback. And I rarely cuss, but I'll drop some cuss words here and there. And I shouldn't say I rarely cuss. Like I'm a Marine. So Clearly, I cuss a lot, but when I present, I rarely cuss. It's all about the material and stuff like that. But I do say something what I try to do, like if I'm teaching trainers how to train, is I'll try to keep the lecturing brief and then get straight in. Let's start doing some practical application of this, because that's how we're really going to, and most of us, that's how we learn anyways. We're kinesthetic learners. Most of us are definitely not auditory. Visual kinesthetics is usually the deal. And so I'll say, like, I'll try to keep it like a TED Talk. Unfortunately, this first part is going to be a lot of lecture, but after that, it's going to be, 15 minutes. Cause I know after 12 to 16 minutes, just like, TED Talks, your mind is going to go into sex and tacos. Right. And I got some like bad feedback, but it was because I was in this like corporate environment. And I think that it's like, you're supposed to have this, like, I'm offended kind of perspective. I don't know where it came from or why that happened, but it was like, I said the word sex. I didn't even use a bad word. I didn't describe any sort of sexual act. I definitely didn't like come across as trying to like pursue anything or anybody sexually. It's so weird. Like just saying that word brought about this like weird, but the thing is, I was like, well, that's why I use that, is so that it grabs your attention. Like
got your attention now, didn't I?
Exactly, because probably you weren't paying attention, and then he just said sex and tacos to me. Like, what the? And then the person that gave me the feedback, he's like, well, at least you didn't say sex tacos. And I was like, I usually do. I actually turned it off. I'll say sex tacos or even sex tacos.
As the saying goes, you can't please everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the point. And so if that is like an intimidating part of it, right, whether it's speaking or writing, it's like all the more reason to do what you're stating. It's like, just do it.
I don't know about you, but I mean, I find that if I can break the ice of the audience with some kind of like laughing moment, which oftentimes is like a joke or self-deprecating humor or maybe an F-bomb or something, I relax.
Oh yeah.
Like
100%.
as a presenter, I'm like, okay, like I've read the room. Okay. Like I can kind of be me. I mean, not that I can't be like the, very clean presenter or writer, but I'm certainly more comfortable when I can just be myself.
Yeah.
And I think the audience that I've gained over the years and the people who follow me, I mean, that's my tribe. So, I mean, that's really all I care about. So, I've kind of, anytime we get negative feedback or comments, like, and it's never fun.
Yeah.
And I certainly lean into them. Like, I don't disregard them. Like, and I definitely say, okay, I see what you're saying. But as we said, like, I don't know, a minute ago, we're not going to please everyone, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, imagine if you sort of muted yourself or mitigated yourself on that one person's, you would lose probably all of your core tribe, right? It's like you would become this like weird, mundane version, monochromatic version of Tony. Is like, no, you don't want that.
We don't want that guy.
No, nobody wants that guy. We want the real deal. We want the person that's going to say a F-bomb here and there. So, obviously, COVID's probably we don't have to talk about COVID. We can talk about kind of moving forward. But obviously, I'm sure it's affected you in some regard, in some way, shapes, and form, or a lot of ways, shapes, and forms. So did I read this right? Are you going to be live and in person in Florida, or is it going to be a streaming thing? How's that?
That's
February, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've unfortunately have taken so many things out of my calendar. It's becoming a real bummer.
Big, yeah.
And it's like, I'll be able to, I put something in like, I'm going to go. I was supposed to go to the UK. I had planned something for September, but because of travel restrictions were so uncertain, and I was like, all right, I'm going to cancel that. And then I was like, all right, I'll replace that with Philadelphia. And then once I did that, Delta variant started ramping up, and then that kind of fell with registration. So like, okay, I got to cancel that now. So I just feel like, I was hopeful like in last year that, okay, 2021, we'll get back into it. And like, nope. Maybe that's going to happen next year. So the Florida, the coached Raise the Bar conference, which was just announced. It's going to be a hybrid. So there's going to be an in-person element. So, however, I think like spots are limited, but then they're going to do it virtually as well. Which I think is smart, because you just have a broader access point to people be able to attend. But the lineup is it's intense. Like it's pretty legit.
I saw. I was like, dude.
I'm actually flabbergasted. I was like, oh man, I'm speaking with these people, and my wife is actually going to be involved with it too, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's going to be in Florida in February. So I'm hopeful that by then, like things might be a little bit more or a little less chaotic.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to breaking the monotony. Like I don't know about you, but I'm very much an introvert, and sometimes I like what I call Tony time.
Yeah.
And when I get to travel, I get that. Like I get to, I present and I have to be on for a day or two, which then when I'm done with that, I'm like ready to like not talk to anyone.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I can walk around the city and do a walking tour and like, become like, I'm a history buff and like walk around and like learn about the city. I love doing that stuff, and I get my alone time.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that for, coming up on, we're going to be up to 2 years now. So I can't wait to travel again, but I understand that it's just the nature of the beast, and it will happen when it happens. So but yeah, the Florida event's going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be a great event, and obviously I think the speaker lineup speaks for itself, to be honest.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
it's a pretty legit lineup.
Yeah. Well, and don't kid yourself. Don't get it twisted, Tony. I think you raised that bar as well. I mean, you're bringing something to the table for sure.
Yes,
right?
I
obviously
understand.
you've earned that, I think. Yeah.
But I often joke that sometimes I feel like I'm the, there's like the George Clooney's and the Matt Damons is like, like Dan John and Mike Boyle and, all the, and I'm like a Clive Owen. It's like a guy, it's like a well-respected actor has won a few awards, but he's not headlining a movie anymore. I'm like that level of fitness celebrity, like like well known, like people know who he is, but I'm not carrying a movie like Brad Pitt or something. But but I mean, they're all friends and colleagues, so but it's always I have to get more intimidated presenting in front of my colleagues than I do. Like just the other people that attend. So, and I feel like I'm so rusty with my presenting because I haven't done it in like 2 years now. So I've done a virtual event myself.
So I was going to ask,
so I did one in the spring, maybe early spring, where I did I usually do a 1-day course called Coaching Competency, and it's 7 hours. I was like, well, I'll do it virtually, but I'm not going to do it in 1 day because no one wants to sit in front of a computer for 7 hours and watch me talk. Yeah. So actually, my good friend Joe Dowdell, who's down in Miami, Florida, he's like, why don't you divide it up and do like 2 hours one weekend, like do like 3-2-2 or something like that. I was like, that's actually a good idea. So
how did that work?
It worked out really well. I mean,
really?
It kept me pretty fresh, and I feel like people sitting down to watch a 2-hour presentation when they know like, okay, it's just 2 hours. Like he'll be done. Yeah. But I recorded it too. So they got the recording as well. But, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe next year I'll do some of those again. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that
me too.
Come April, I'll be able to do some international travel. Like I am in love with London. Like, I don't know what,
really?
I'm just so infatuated by that city. I love going there every time. I miss it. And I'm hopeful that maybe I can make
rad.
An appearance there in April. So
I feel like London, Europe, even like the Middle East or whatever, there's so much more history there. And not that obviously there isn't history here or whatever, but like, it's like etched in stone, like legit, like, and so I can understand that, especially being a history buff. Yeah.
Like I've been to London, like I think 7 times.
Yeah. Any other European?
Any places I'd like to been?
Or that you have been, like Italy or Spain.
I've never been to Italy, but I've been to Prague, and I love that. My wife and I really loved we spent a few days in Copenhagen.
Oh yeah.
We really enjoyed Copenhagen, and I as a country, I love Germany. Like I am a rule follower. My wife kind of makes fun of me sometimes because like I'm someone who like
they're your people.
I'm not crossing the street until it says walk. Like and in Germany I noticed that was a thing. Like no one was crossing the street.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I love it here. Like but no, just like like Europe in general. I love going over in Europe in general, just because public transportation is so much more lovely. Mm-hmm. And certainly you get a taste of like different cultures and way of doing things, which is always nice to experience.
Yeah, I feel like, and Boston isn't bad, but I feel like Boston, like you've been around as long as like New York and like some of these other bigger cities?
Well,
like
Boston is often regarded as the most European vibe-ish city in the U.S.
Yeah.
Obviously because of the history here.
I feel like maybe it was me. Like I did more walking in Boston, and maybe it's because I wanted to walk. I don't know, but I felt like city. It didn't have as much public transport as like Chicago or New York or something like that.
Well, the public transportation here it exists. It's just archaic and slow.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, you can get to like everywhere in the city you need to go. It's just brutally slow. Yeah. Compared to like when you go to the underground in London, it's like insane how fast and efficient it is. It's like
Moscow, Russia is the same. I was totally appalled at how intricate and awesome. I mean, it's like basically a circle of tubes. And the cooler part is you go down these like almost seemingly endless escalators where it's like, I'm traveling to the center of the earth. I'm pretty sure like this is insane. I mean, it's similar in London, right? Where it's like, it's all the tubes.
You go way down. Yeah. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm that in terms of COVID, that was certainly, I mean, my business was shut down for 3 months and, thankfully Boston, like I was able to open back up at the end of June of 2020. But in terms of like my business, like the biggest thing I took the hit was just the workshops and traveling. That was a fairly big chunk of my pie of income, but that's why I worked hard in my career to have other revenue streams and ways of, having people send me or pay me to do stuff. It's just that I don't have to rely on just any one particular thing. So, the travel is just, certainly it's nice to do from a business standpoint, but just from a personal standpoint, it's just, I just enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. It is true. You get that me time where you can just, you got to be on, but then you can just chill out.
And then I am exhausted. Like the last thing I want to do after like presenting for 2 straight days is like, talk to more people. But, so like, I mean, hanging out in my hotel room by myself is fine, or I'll just like I'll do a walking tour. And I love doing those where it's just like, I keep my mouth shut and just listen. I love it. Yeah, I love doing that. But
so do you have to like hide like from any of the other presenters or other people you like if they see you, you're like sunglasses, hoodies?
When I'm at conferences, no, I have to turn it on. Like as much as I complain about being an introvert, it's a spectrum. Like I know if I have to turn it on, I can turn it on. I think people are often surprised when I label myself an introvert, particularly when I'm presenting. Yeah. Because I feel like I'm a fairly animated presenter. Not as animated as Mark Fisher. I don't know if you ever listened to Mark Fisher present. He's like, anyone who follows him is just doomed. Like you can't, like you can't compare to Mark Fisher. So, but I mean, I feel like I'm fairly animated, and then after doing that for several hours, I'm like exhausted. And I just need to like, my recharging is just like being quiet. So
I feel like Martin Rooney's like that too. He's just like high energy. It's
Todd Durkin. It's like unbelievable. It's like the amount of energy. I'm like, they're doing a workout. I'm like,
100%. Yeah.
Oh, it's insane.
It's great. It's great. Well, so to help from COVID and all of this stuff, like what are some of the main things that obviously we talked a lot, and I think so we have 15% of our followership is trainers and coaches and whatever. So I think they've probably gleaned a lot just from us like rapping back and forth in things that they can do to help improve their game and improve their careers. But what about, that 85% of the person that's like, man, I just want to get strong. Like what would be the first sort of Tony product or service or whatever that if they're in Timbuktu or they're down the street, like what do they go when they go on TonyGentilcore.com?
My flagship product is one that I've done with Dean Somerset, and that's the complete shoulder and hip blueprint. There's 2 versions of it. There's version 1 and there's version 2. Both have separate material. And that's a really deep dive on how we break down the squat and break down the deadlift and try to really cater it and like mold it to the individual. We kind of respect that people have different anatomy and different ability levels, different injury histories. And we also do the same for upper extremity stuff too. So breaking down the shoulder, how can we make bench pressing more shoulder friendly? Overhead pressing bothers your shoulders. What are some things we can do to make that more comfortable? It isn't really about showcasing people what they can't do. It's really highlighting what they can do. But just in really kind of connecting the dots between assessment and performance. So I feel like obviously a lot of fitness industry people like that product, but we've had a lot of people who are just normal people who like to lift heavy things that have attended our workshops and bought the product. So if they just like to geek out a little bit on anatomy, we don't go too far down that rabbit hole. But it is important information, so you'll get that, but you also get a lot of the practical, actionable advice on how we can how I coach up the deadlift. Like here's how I coach it up. Here's some like big rock cues that I use across the board, but also here's how I would modify it given these other things that I have to lean into with anthropometry and injury history, etc. So you get to see that like how you present. It's like, okay, here's the theory lecture part, but then here's the hands-on, like let's put in an action part, and that's what that product does. It does both.
That's awesome. And I think as we get better in the fitness industry, which is relatively young still, right? It's like, but as we get better at that infotainment, right? Like giving them what they want while also giving them what they need also, right? In that it's like, man, we'll create people that know how to fish versus people that are just relying on that next fish to come out, right? And just hitting the lever. And so I love that you have those products that can serve both, really, right? It serves the coach and the trainer, so then they can get better at coaching and cueing and teaching that, but also,
but it teaches the regular person too, without going too far over their head. Like it isn't, we're not going, because that can just be boring. But but you're right. It hits both nails for sure.
Well, so if you're watching this and you haven't already gone to TonyGentilecore.com, check it out. If you're on Instagram, Tony Gentilecore, he makes it easy, right? It's just his name, simple.
Yeah, just right? Not many Tony Gentilcores out there. Yeah.
we love that, and hopefully we'll be able to see you on live stream live in person in Florida. Hopefully that happens in February and you don't have to tap in, via Zoom or something like that.
I hope not.
And so we ask all of our guests this to sort of conclude the show. And clearly we just sort of wave topped and skimmed the surface. So we can totally follow this up with another deep dive, and maybe we'll deep dive into one of those subjects or something like that on the next one. But how would you define living fit from the Tony Gentilecore standpoint?
That's a deep question for sure. One that, and my answer to that is 3x52, I think, and I'll explain that in a second. You might know what it is, but I think a lot of people get caught in we get caught in this web of like, I call it we should on ourselves. Actually, I stole that from my wife, who's a psychologist. Like, I should look this way. I should be doing that exercise. I should be doing that program. Who gives a shit? Like that's a made up term. It's a story you're making up in your head. The important thing to me is this idea of 3x52. So when we start talking about how many days per week should I be lifting, or how many sets and reps should I be doing, the philosophy I like to instill on my clients and my athletes, more so my clients, my athletes need to get after it. But my regular Joe clients is like, if you're working out 3 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, and just being consistent, some good stuff is going to happen. Like, don't sweat the details. Like, I think it's important to have goals. Like, I'm very much a fan of helping my clients find a performance-based goal that fulfills them, whether that's performing their first chin up or doing a bench press pain-free or deadlifting 2 times body weight, whatever that goal may be. I think that is what provides substance and intent and purpose with our training. I think that's very important. But at the end of the day, I like this idea of 3x52 because then it's a non-intimidating number. Like 3 days, like I can work out 3 days a week, and I think if someone's consistent with that, I think some great things will happen. Because to me, at the end of the day, it's just law of consistency when it comes to fitness. It isn't about looking a certain way. It isn't about lifting a certain weight. It's just being consistent. and certainly having a well-roundedness to it. Certainly, I'm someone who's a little biased towards lifting heavy things, but certainly I understand that 3x52 could be going to a yoga class or going to a CrossFit class or Orange Theory or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
So that to me is like what fitness should be. It's just we got to stop shooting on ourselves and just kind of be more consistent with, not worrying about the smaller details and, getting in our own heads all the time.
I love that, because that is living. It's not this grandiose romantic ideal of should. This is truly actually living. This is how we live. And so 3x52 makes it simple. Love it. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I'm so glad we were able to finally have our schedules cross. So great to have you here. And thanks for all of the incredible infotainment.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to living.fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.